Hello, this is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com with your Sunday update for the 28th of February 2010. And now for the real news. More startling information has emerged on the U.S. newborn DNA database this week, confirming the worst fears of the program's critics. As reported by the Corbett Report last week, numerous state governments around the United States, as well as regional governments in other countries like Australia, have been secretly collecting newborn blood samples for a previously undisclosed DNA database. The blood samples were used without the knowledge or consent of parents, and when it was recently revealed that the baby's DNA was actually being taken without the parents' knowledge or consent, health authorities responded that the DNA was being used solely for medical research into deadly childhood diseases. A new investigative report in the Texas Tribune this week, however, proves otherwise. The new report shows that the DNA was in fact passed to the U.S. Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory to create a national law enforcement database. The database is eventually to be linked with similar data from other countries, creating an international law enforcement database constructed entirely from DNA taken without the awareness of the newborn's parents. Now, the Texas Health Department is in hot water for having misled Jim Harrington, the lawyer on a class action lawsuit against the program when it first became public knowledge last year, about the nature and extent of that DNA collection. Describing a meeting he had with the health department about the database during litigation, Harrington said, quote, "I can't tell you how many times we sat there and they said, no law enforcement. They said it's only about medical research. It's only about medical research." End quote. In related news, J.B. Van Hollen, the Attorney General of Wisconsin, called this week for a change in state law to compel DNA submissions from the public without resorting to criminal proceedings. In other news this week, an al-Qaeda operative captured by Iran has provided startling details about how his terrorist organization was provided funds by the CIA to help destabilize the Iranian Republic.
The head of the Jundullah group was captured earlier this week in the south of the country. Abul Malik Rigi says he met the US agents in Pakistan who promised support for carrying out terrorist attacks in Iran.
The Americans promised to give us aid. They said they'd cooperate with us and give me military equipment, arms and machine guns. They told me that in Kyrgyzstan they have a base called Manas near Bishkek, and that in a place like this, some high-ranking American person could come and we could reach an agreement on making personal contacts. The Americans said Iran was going its own way, and they said their problem at the present is Iran. Not al-Qaeda, not the Taliban, their main problem is Iran. One of the CIA officers said that it was too difficult for them to attack Iran militarily, but they plan to give aid and support to all anti-Iranian groups that have the capability to wage war and create difficulty for the Islamic State.
The news merely confirms what ABC News, the Sunday Telegraph, and others have been reporting for years, that George W. Bush signed a covert action plan to fund al-Qaeda-linked terrorist groups like Jundullah to start a campaign to topple the Iranian government in 2007. The campaign, sponsored by U.S. intelligence, has been linked to a wave of terrorist attacks in Iran, including an attack in 2009 that killed 42 people, including generals, tribal leaders, and bystanders. In a related story, the Senate Democrats have voted to extend the most controversial measures of the Patriot Act for yet another year, including provisions that allow the FBI to perform roving wiretaps on U.S. citizens, provisions that allow the government to perform electronic monitoring on a U.S. citizen without even showing any connection to terrorism, and a provision that allows investigators to look at the U.S. citizen's banking, library, or medical records merely on a declaration that the suspect is somehow related to terrorism. The Patriot Act was originally enacted in 2001 under the pretext of fighting the very al-Qaeda organization that the CIA has been funding in places like Iran. Also making news this week, newly released documents from the Department of Defense indicate that U.S. Joint Forces Command had been monitoring Planned Parenthood and white supremacist groups in advance of the 2002 Olympics in Utah. Although the juxtaposition of the abortion group with racist organizations may seem like a non sequitur at first glance, the connection is in fact well documented. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret, as well as the board members of the group's forerunner, the American Birth Control League, were in fact virulently racist eugenicists. Lothrop Stoddard, one of the board members of Sanger's Birth Control League, even wrote a book called The Rising Tide of Color Against White Supremacy, in which he warned of a population explosion among colored peoples and a subsequent erosion of Western civilization. In a letter to Dr. Clarence Gamble in December 1939, Sanger herself outlined her group's so-called Negro Project, which was a plan to, quote, Hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal, and we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. Then Senator Barack Obama extolled the virtues of Planned Parenthood in 2007.
Obviously, my hope under a universal health care system is that everybody's got access to basic care and we have less of a patchwork quilt of services. I still believe that it is important for organizations like Planned Parenthood to be part of that system because many young women, for example, may be much more comfortable when they're in college or universities or other places going to Planned Parenthood clinics and services to get contraception, for example.
In 2008, the group came under fire for agreeing to accept funds to specifically fund abortions for blacks in Oklahoma.
Would it be possible for me to donate that money specifically for these minority groups so that they could have access to abortions?
Yes, it would be.
Wonderful. And could I specify that abortion be done, or those abortions be done for a particular minority group, or how does that work?
If you wish, you can.
Okay. So for example, the black community in Tulsa, would it be possible to give the money specifically for that?
You sure can.
Wonderful. Great. The abortions will be done specifically for the black community abortions.
I will mark it in such a way that definitely it will.
On a black baby?
Yes.
Thank you. Great.
And in New Mexico.
Can I make the donation specifically for a minority group?
Like a specific group of color, or like a group of...
I mean, like, I want the abortion to be for an African-American baby.
Okay.
And I was wondering if that could be possible.
The exact amount we charge right now is $450 for an abortion.
Okay, $450.
Mm-hmm. And we can definitely designate it for an African-American.
Wonderful.
And in Ohio.
If you specifically want it to underwrite an abortion for a minority person, you can target it that way. You can specify that that's how you want it spent.
Okay, yeah, because there's definitely way too many black people in Ohio, so I'm just trying to do my part.
Okay, whatever.
And in Idaho.
I want to specify that abortion to help a minority group. Would that be possible?
Absolutely.
Like the black community, for example?
Certainly.
Okay. So the abortion could be, I could give money specifically for a black baby. That'd be the purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. If you wanted to designate that you wanted your gift to be used to help an African-American woman in need, then we would certainly make sure that gift was earmarked specifically for that purpose.
Great, because I really face trouble with affirmative action, and I don't want my kids being disadvantaged, against black kids. I just had a baby. I want to put it in his name, so that's definitely possible.
Oh, always.
In 2009, Hillary Clinton received the Margaret Sanger Award in recognition of the founder of Planned Parenthood, who wrote in 1922 that immigrants, minorities, and other unfit parents were a, quote, unceasingly spawning class of human beings who should never have been born at all. In 1922, she also wrote, quote, the most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. Mrs. Clinton used the award ceremony as an opportunity to praise Sanger and her organization.
And when I think about what she did all those years ago in Brooklyn, taking on archetypes, taking on attitudes and accusations flowing from all directions, I am really in awe of her.
Now, stay tuned for episode 119 of the Corbett Report, Lessons in Resistance, Whistleblowing, where we take a look at the 9/11 whistleblowers, including Robert Wright, Bill Bergman, Sibel Edmonds, Indira Singh, Colleen Rowley, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, J. Michael Springman, and Richard Andrew Grove.